now call on Deputy Donnelly. I understand you want to share your time, but unfortunately the order doesn't make allowance for that.
Would that be okay?
Unless the House agrees to it. Is it agreed that...
Yeah, thank you. Share with Deputy Ross. Thank you.
Thank you. 2.5 minutes each.
Thanks. I think, Taoiseach, this is a bittersweet moment for the Irish people. At the start of the crisis, we had very low national debt, we had very high employment, we had very low immigration, we had no negative equity, we had no mortgage crisis. And 5 years later, we have heartbreaking unemployment, particularly for the youth. We have an entire generation that's been financially destroyed. We have very high immigration, the highest level ever. This year, it's continuing to rise. And the losses of professional investors around the world have been shouldered on the Irish people. Billions and billions of euro of the Irish people's money has been paid out in windfall profits to speculative investors over the last number of years. And unfortunately, we are the toast of financial centres all over the world because we've made an awful lot of speculative investors very, very wealthy over the last number of years. So I think today is a bittersweet moment, and I'm glad the Troika is gone. I think we're all glad the Troika is gone, particularly, I have to say, the ECB and the European Commission, because it is those two institutions that led the charge on the Irish people picking up the tab for international financial losses. It turns out that the IMF actually spoke in our favour over time. So I'm glad they're gone, and I'm glad they're not going to be telling us how to run our country according to an outdated economic outlook. I support your decision not to avail of a precautionary credit line. As the Taoiseach has said, there's about 30 billion in the bank. I believe we have to roll over about 7 billion in national debt, and of course we'll have a deficit somewhere between 8 and 9 billion. So it looks like we have about twice the cash that we would conceivably need for next year. I think you've made the right decision. And can I say that the next thing you've got to do, I know there's a lot of effort going into this, but it absolutely has to be achieved, is that we get retrospective recapitalisation from the ESM, because we cannot continue to ask the Irish people and children not yet born yet to continue to pay for the mistakes that the financial sector made over the last number of years. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Ross.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor. I recognise that this is a very important decision that has been made by the government, but I regret that it's been reduced to the level of political bravado, and that the fact that the Dáil has been called at such notice and that there is no proper debate on this. What I missed in the Taoiseach's speech was this, and it means that I can't judge, and not anybody in this House can judge properly, whether this is the right or the wrong decision. What were the terms that were offered to the government for this particular credit line? Because we met as a group, we met the Troika, Taoiseach, and they spelt out quite clearly that the terms were going to be very, very punitive indeed. There is, if you take this, which is after all just an overdraft, there is a heavy price to be paid initially for getting that overdraft. And what this House was due today was not an announcement about how well the economy was doing and how well the government is doing, but the merits of the decision that the government has taken today. How much would this have cost? How much would it have cost? Would it have cost nothing? What was the interest rate? What was the length of repayments? What was the deal? We got no details of that, so we can't. And the Dáil has been treated with a certain amount of contempt by being asked to support this or to comment on it in a vacuum when the government is aware of the terms that were on offer. Now, it is not a historic day in terms of any great changes which are going to happen in government policy, because a movement from the hands of the Troika straight to the hands of the bond markets will mean that we are subject, and the people are subject, to exactly the same, if not greater, disciplines that they were subject to before. The bond markets will require
Stay quiet, please.
The bond markets will require as much austerity as the government has been imposing at the whim of the Troika. So to present this, as the Taoiseach did, as a historic day for Ireland is not an honest opinion. We are not restoring our sovereignty today. We are not regaining our sovereignty. What we are doing is we are being treated to a political theatre by the government which is a camouflage. And tell the people today that there's going to be a change in policy. but there isn't. Austerity will continue. The imposition of other measures will continue. And the one thing that's
Thank
missing...
you, Deputy.
Yeah, I'm just finishing. The one thing that was missing from the Taoiseach speech was this.
Stay quiet, please.
Was this. We had no mention of the banks, the important element of our economy. We had no mention of the ESM, and we had no mention of paying back legacy debt with ESM funds. We have achieved nothing today that we couldn't have achieved otherwise.